provide you with the lowest per GB rates, night or day. SLT 4G, driving you ever forward.
Making headlines at first at 9. Attempts to convince. President Maithripala assures UN resident coordinator in Sri Lanka that the government's recent conduct is constitutional. A new beginning. Premier Minister Rajapakse says an alternative is required to the fuel pricing formula while assuming duties as the Minister of Finance. Cause for concern. Dr. Gunadasa Amarasekara highlights the trepidations of the West.
If Mahinda comes to power, these fellows know that they are finished.
Second coming of a national government. UNP MPs promise another national government by Friday. Another black mark. Nuan Soiza charged with 3 counts of breaching ICC's anti-corruption code. Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhamike Kanayaka. Let's start with your local stories. President Maithripala briefed UN resident coordinator in Sri Lanka, Hannah Singer, on the prevailing political situation in the country and assured that the government's conduct in the process is very much in accordance with Sri Lanka's constitution. The head of state gave this assurance when the UN resident coordinator in Sri Lanka called on him at the presidential secretariat this morning. The head of state also had a meeting with SLFP's electoral organisers today. A meeting between President Maithripala and electorate organisers of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party was held at the President's house today. During the meeting, the President apprised the organisers on prevailing political situation in the country as well as reasons which led to the formation of the new government. All SLFP organisers pledged their fullest support to the future activities of the new government. In the meantime, UN resident coordinator in Sri Lanka, Hannah Singer, called on President Maithripala at the presidential secretariat this morning. The President brought the UN representative up to speed on the prevailing political situation in Sri Lanka and assured that the government's conduct in the process is very much in line with Sri Lanka's constitution and the government continues to function within the constitutional framework. Expressing her views, the UN resident coordinator said that the UN is ready to provide every possible assistance to Sri Lanka in the future. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapakse today assumed duties as the Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs of the interim government. During his first speech as the Finance Minister, Premier Rajapakse emphasised the need to introduce a different solution in place of the much scrutinised fuel pricing formula introduced recently by former Minister of Finance Mangala Samaraweera.
As per tradition, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapakse assumed duties as the Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs at an auspicious time at the ministry today. Many, including ministers and parliamentarians as well as newly appointed Secretary to the Finance Ministry, S.R. Attigala, was present at the occasion.
This ministry managed funds well, reducing state debt, which was at over 91% of the GDP in 2005 to 71% by 2014. We also managed to increase foreign reserves to $8,208 million by the end of 2014 from $2,735 million in 2005. I know this ministry is in a chaotic situation following the last 3 years and 10 months. It is reported that the economic growth is under 3%. Even though oil prices were low as $40 a barrel in 2017, the benefit was not given to the public. We can't have prices of fuel fluctuating monthly in line with a pricing formula. Prices don't seem to come down once they go up. International financial markets should be taken into the equation while giving consideration to whether the tax levied is reasonable. The foreign exchange rate should be stabilized and we should move towards an economic policy which enables the country to generate foreign exchange, among other things. At the same time, our local business community should take the lead in this. Even during the war, we never faltered on loan repayments. The President has already made evident that the agri-sector should be given prominence. Administration of 6 provincial councils have been put in the hands of officials instead of public representatives. Those who speak of democracy while postponing elections level criticism for proroguing Parliament for 11 days. This is nothing new, as every president has done this. They attempt to show the global community that Sri Lanka is heading towards a dictatorship. We should put a halt to this country being put in the hands of foreigners, and that's what the public expect from us.
After assuming office as the Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs, Prime Minister Rajapakse met with His Eminence Archbishop of Colombo Malcolm Cardinal Ranjit at the Archbishop's official residence in Colombo.
Minister of Tourism and Wildlife Vasantha Senanayake insists that he will never leave the United National Party despite accepting a ministerial position in the new government. Assuming duties at the Ministry of Tourism today, he maintained that a change or more like reforms are required within the UNP. Minister of Tourism and Wildlife Vasantha Senanayake and Deputy Minister Anand Aludgamage assumed duties at the ministry today. We hope to work in this government under the slogan Country First. I have not resigned from the UNP. I don't know whether the party is to take disciplinary action against me. Any MP can take a ministerial position upon invitation of the President, and a party cannot remove that MP for it. I was of the stance that a change is required within the UNP, and I maintain that. The country was pushed to a major crisis due to the actions by the former Prime Minister and several persons who were very close to him. The country also suffered economically as well as socially. Meanwhile, newly appointed State Minister for the Ministry of Plantation Industries, Vadivel Suresh, assumed duties at the ministry today. People in the Badulla district are happy over my decision. They expected a ministerial position for me as their representative. We waited 3.5 years. When the wage issue of plantation workers surfaced, I kneeled before leaders, but I failed to do anything for my people. Had I been given the place I deserved, I would still be there. I know there are personnel who prevent the daily wage of plantation workers to be increased. I will reveal them later. In the meantime, Minister Douglas Devananda, who was entrusted with the Ministry of Resettlement, Rehabilitation, Northern Development and Hindu Religious Affairs, assumed duties this morning. The President and the Prime Minister gave me this ministry as they know that I can run this properly. Therefore, I will give my all. Attorney General Jayasuriya has informed Speaker of Parliament Jayasuriya that expressing his opinion on the legitimacy of the new Prime Minister's appointment and the establishment of the interim government would be deemed inappropriate. This was expressed in a letter sent by the Attorney General to the Speaker. In a letter on Sunday, Speaker of Parliament Jayasuriya inquired the legitimacy of recent political manifestations in the country from Attorney General Jayasuriya. The Attorney General gave his response by way of a letter dated 30th of October saying that he is of the view it would be deemed inappropriate for him to express an opinion on the change in premiership and the government of Sri Lanka. Government co-spokesperson Minister Mahinda Samarasinghe, however, said yesterday that an email sent on the 27th of October by then-acting Attorney General Dappula de Oliveira proves that the appointment of former President Mahinda Rajapakse as the Prime Minister is lawful. Minister Samarasinghe read out the particular email sent by then-acting Attorney General de Oliveira, which was sent as a response to the Speaker's inquiry on the legality of the new Prime Minister's appointment, as former Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe insists that he is still the legitimate Prime Minister.
Honourable Speaker, with regard to your email below, I draw your attention to the notices published in Gazettes Extraordinary bearing numbers 2094/43 dated 26/10/2018 and 2094/44 dated 26/10/2018 by the Secretary to the President by order of His Excellency the President. Further, your attention is also drawn to inter alia the provisions of Article 48(1) of the Constitution.
Meanwhile, UN Permanent Representative for Sri Lanka, Hannah Singer, Ambassador of the European Union to Sri Lanka and the Maldives, Tunglai Mogg, British High Commissioner to Sri Lanka, James Doris, Canadian High Commissioner to Sri Lanka, David McKinnon, and German Ambassador to Sri Lanka, Jean Rode, met with Speaker Jayasuriya today to discuss the current political situation. The Speaker's media division says the diplomats had expressed concern over the prevailing situation and laid out negative diplomatic consequences which could manifest as a result. During the meeting at the parliamentary premises, the Speaker had requested diplomats not to rush into making hasty decisions on Sri Lanka, as he hoped to meet with President Maithripala to reach a constitutional and a democratic solution to the matter. In the meantime, a group of civil society activists submitted an online petition with 16,000 signatures today. They had requested that Parliament be convened immediately. Leader of the United National Front, Ranil Wickremesinghe, claims there is no credible evidence to suggest that a foreign mission is behind Sri Lanka's present political process. The former Premier expressed these views when journalists representing several foreign news agencies met him at Temple Trees today. In the meantime, the UNF also promised a new national government under a broader alliance come next Friday. Although President Maithripala appointed former President Minister Rajapakse as Prime Minister last Friday, former Premier Ranil Wickremesinghe continues to occupy the Temple Trees. The Pirit chanting, which commenced at the premises on Sunday, also continues to be. The former Premier claims that he will leave the Temple Trees only if PM Rajapakse proves that he has the majority in Parliament. There have been 6 confirmed crossovers already to the interim government, with some saying there are more on the way. In such a backdrop, a communique with the letterhead of Prime Minister's office alluded to a tense situation which arose at the Temple Trees this afternoon. According to the communique, the situation arose when 2 persons, claiming to have come from Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapakse's office, entered the Temple Trees and attempted to remove stationery following an inspection. It further says that the duo entered the Temple Trees without informing the security units or declaring their identities. They were later released after their identities were checked. The Secretary to the Prime Minister, however, convened a media briefing this afternoon and clarified the matter. Temple Trees is currently not under the purview of the Prime Minister's office or the government. Therefore, we transferred officials attached to Temple Trees and allowed them to collect their things for the past 2 days. While 2 of those officials attempted to do so, a group of outsiders present at Temple Trees had threatened and attempted to attack them. However, they were able to flee. We made a complaint to the IGP and the Ministry of Defence. In the meantime, the United National Front convened a media briefing to outline their plans to form a new government. We decided to launch a broader alliance to establish a national government. Through that, we hope to eliminate all the misconceptions hovering over it. We invite the big hitters of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party to join us. It will be a better national government. In the meantime, members of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna representing the Provincial Council staged a protest in Ballakotuwa in Alla, urging former Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe to leave Temple Trees. Now, convener of the Federation of National Organisations, Dr. Gunadasa Amarasekara, is critical of the country's leaders for summoning foreign diplomats to explain Sri Lanka's internal affairs. Addressing a media briefing held in Colombo today, Dr. Amarasekara, however, said that it is understandable that former Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe summoning foreign diplomats, since it was the Western nations which brought him to power.
All these diplomats, high commissioners from different countries, especially from Western countries. In fact, first Ranil Wickremesinghe invited them and explained and of course made a pleaded with them and asked them to bring him back as Prime Minister. Well, Ranil Wickremesinghe doing it is perfectly all right, because after all it was Western powers who appointed Ranil Wickremesinghe. So Western powers have a moral right to protect Wickremesinghe and make him Prime Minister again. That's explainable. But what I can't understand is why President Sirisena should summon those diplomats and high commissioners and try to explain them. Why should we? I mean, we are a sovereign, independent nation. Does Trump, when he does something in the governance of the country, summon Putin or even Sri Lankan ambassador to explain? No, it should be obvious to our leaders why they want to come here, these diplomats and so on, and pressure us and ask us to reappoint Ranil Wickremesinghe. In today's Island editorial, they have provided the answer I would like to read to you. There is an unusual flurry of diplomatic activity in Colombo, with some foreign envoys meeting the Speaker. They know every passing day matters in the game being played. Their concern is not about Sri Lankan democracy. They fear that China, which is expanding its naval power apace in the Indian Ocean, will gain from the change of government in Colombo, that it If Mahinda comes to power, these fellows know that they are finished. If we want to not consult these fellows, the important thing is to develop a kind of national economy.
Meanwhile, former Prime Minister D.M. Jayarathne backed President Maithripala Sirisena's decision to appoint a new Prime Minister today. Several others also expressed their views on the current political manifestations. Everybody is misusing the freedom of speech today. Over the past few days, certain ministers and parliamentarians made such indecent and inappropriate remarks before the media regarding the president's decision. The political culture in Sri Lanka has degenerated to that level. For those of you who calculate on behalf of former Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, numbers are not reduced from 96, but numbers are reducing from 106. Everyone in the country knows that UNP had only 40 or so parliamentarians. I had 2/3 majority and I was the Prime Minister. But then they removed me to give power to the UNP, which only had 42 parliamentarians. No one objected because it clearly says in the Constitution that the President may appoint someone to the post of Prime Minister who he thinks would command the confidence of Parliament. Student federations of the Southeastern University and the Rajarati University staged a protest in front of the University Grants Commission in Colombo today. They demanded prompt solutions for their issues, however dispersed without their concerns being addressed. Students of the Southeastern University and the Rajarati University staged a protest today against the suspension of students as well as demanding the release of 14 students who are currently in remand custody. The demonstration commenced from the Fort Railway Station. Protesters then made their way to the University Grants Commission and demanded a discussion with Subject Minister Dr. Rajapakse, and since they did not get the opportunity, they engaged in a protest in front of it. The protesters then entered the University Grants Commission. According to security officials of the University Grants Commission, however, although the students requested a discussion, there was no responsible authority present for discussions. Eventually, however, the students dispersed.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Derana 24/7.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. The Public Debt Department of the Central Bank announces that the government has already made arrangements to repay international bonds worth $1.5 billion maturing in January and April next year. The statement by the central bank says that the government of Sri Lanka has been issuing international sovereign bonds since 2007 and has maintained an unblemished record on servicing of its debt obligations timely, including ISBS since independence. ISBS issued in January and April of 2014 to the tune of $1,000 million and $500 million are due to mature in January and April in 2019. The statement further says that the government has already made pre-funding arrangements for meeting the maturing ISB obligations in 2019 through proceeds of divestment of non-strategic assets and funding through syndicate arrangements. And now to give you a market update, the all-share price index declined to 5,953.47 today, with a turnover crossing 1.3 billion rupees. Meanwhile, total foreign sales accounted for 64.3% of the turnover. We now have Achyutan Srirangan from the First Capital Holdings with a brief report from the trading floor.
Growth ended in a red, reversing the positive sentiment witnessed for the last three trading sessions, dragged down mainly by HNB and Dialog. Turnover had improved compared to the previous day, while volume dipped marginally. A net foreign outflow witnessed with a high foreign participation.
Taking a look at the currency, the Sri Lankan rupee fell to a record low today. Now the currency slid to 176 rupees and 25 cents to the dollar, surpassing the previous record low of 174 rupees and 75 cents hit yesterday. With that, let's take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other currencies around the globe. Time to look at news from around the globe. US President Donald Trump has offered condolences at the Pennsylvania synagogue where 11 Jewish worshippers were shot dead at the weekend. He was joined by First Lady Melania Trump, his daughter and son-in-law at the Tree of Life Temple in Pittsburgh. Hundreds of protesters gathered on the streets chanting slogans against the president.
Protesters lined the streets in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania yesterday as US President Donald Trump paid a brief visit to the city's Tree of Life synagogue, where a shooter opened fire and killed 11 congregants on the Jewish Sabbath. Trump was accompanied by First Lady Melania Trump, as well as his daughter Ivanka and son-in-law Jared Kushner, who are Jewish. They were greeted by Rabbi Jeffrey Myers, who led them inside the temple. Emerging about 18 minutes later, the president went to a memorial outside the building where the First Lady placed a flower and the president placed a small stone on a marker for each of the shooting victims. The attack, which the Anti-Defamation League has described as the deadliest targeting Jews in US history, has heightened a national debate over Trump's rhetoric, which critics say has contributed to a surge in white nationalist and neo-Nazi activity. Trump's visit comes just 7 days before election that will determine the balance of power in Congress between the Republican and Democratic parties. The Republicans currently control both the Senate and the House of Representatives.
Let's take a look at other emerging stories from around the world.
India has unveiled the world's tallest statue, which costs $430 million to build. The 182-meter high structure in the western state of Gujarat is a bronze-clad tribute to independence leader Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said the Statue of Unity would serve as a major tourist attraction. But locals say this is a waste of public money and that the funds could have been put to better use. A Peruvian zoo is celebrating treasured new additions, 3 Bengal white tiger cubs, one of the world's most endangered species, in their first public appearance yesterday since being born. The whelps, born 2 months ago, are in good health and now weigh about 8 kilos each. They are currently being fed 5 kilos of meat and chicken per day. White tigers are genetic variations of better-known orange Bengal tigers. A young whale in the French Indian Ocean island of the Reunion died yesterday despite long efforts by rescuers to save it. The young female humpback whale stranded itself early on Monday morning on the side of one of the main roads where a viaduct is currently being built. After a 6-hour effort on Monday, rescuers managed to free it using a crane and it led it back to sea. But late in the evening, the juvenile whale was back, stranding itself on the tetrapods which support the shoreline road. In a rare event, a jaguar was caught on film recently as it prowled along a beach in Todd Grove National Park located on the Caribbean coast of Costa Rica. The jaguar could be seen rushing up to and catching a buzzard that was feasting on a dead sea turtle on the beach. The jaguar quickly sensed the presence of park rangers, however, and beat a hasty retreat back to the jungle.
You are watching Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Derana 24/7.
Time for sports. The International Cricket Council has charged former Sri Lankan player Nuwan with 3 counts of breaching its anti-corruption code. Former Sri Lankan player Nuwan was suspended with immediate effect. Now, accordingly, he is charged with 3 counts or 3 offences under Article 211, 214 and 244 of the ICC Code. The charges relate to being party to an effort to fix or contrive or to otherwise influence improperly the result, progress, conduct or other aspect of an international match, directly soliciting, inducing, enticing or encouraging a player to breach Code Article 211 and And of course, failing to disclose to the ICC's anti-corruption unit full details of any approaches or invitations he received to engage in corrupt conduct. Soisa, who played 30 Test and 95 one-day internationals for Sri Lanka during 1997 and 2007, has 14 days from the 1st of November to respond to the charges. Moving on to tennis, in a battle of big serves, home favourite Jo-Wilfried Tsonga was knocked out of the Paris Masters in a grueling 3-set match which went on for just shy of 3 hours yesterday. Novak Djokovic, meanwhile, kept his hopes of world number 1 spot alive as he brushed aside his round 2 opponent.
Novak Djokovic's pursuit of the season-ending world number 1 spot continued with a 7-5, 6-1 victory over Portuguese qualifier João Sousa in the second round of the Paris Masters yesterday. The 31-year-old Serb has returned to his brutal best this season with Grand Slam wins at Wimbledon and the US Open along with ATP Masters triumphs in Cincinnati and Shanghai. Canada's Milos Raonic meanwhile came from a set down to reach the second round with a hard-fought 6-7, 7-6, 7-6 win over local favourite Jo-Wilfried Tsonga. The 27-year-old Raonic will next face Roger Federer, who is chasing his 100th career title after winning the Swiss indoors last week. In the meantime, Daniil Medvedev also advanced to the second round after a 6-2, 6-2 win over Spain's Pablo Carreño Busta yesterday. It took Medvedev only 50 minutes. The 22-year-old Russian will now face 11th seed Borna Coric of Croatia in the second round. Medvedev will be joined in the next round by Spain's Fernando Verdasco, who saw France's Jeremy Chardy 6-4, 6-4 to set up a clash with compatriot and world number 1 Rafael Nadal. A more measured than usual performance from Verdasco, ranked world number 27, saw the Spaniard win 80% of points on the second serve.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
On to your weather forecast now. Temperatures will vary between 20 to 30 degrees Celsius tomorrow, with the high temperatures expected in the district of Batticaloa, with lowest expected from the central hills. Meanwhile, the low-level atmospheric disturbance in the vicinity of Sri Lanka is currently bringing showers and thundershowers from across the island. And north central and eastern provinces, as well as the Maithripala district in particular, will have to brace for heavy showers throughout the day tomorrow as well. Here is a look at your city-by-city forecast for the next 24 hours. And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. And before we go, we'd like to take you to Palatupana. Located en route to the Yala National Park, this area is rich with birds and other wildlife such as leopards and sloth bears. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Bringing you the news and information 24 hours a day. This is Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.